Stop. I know that you're afraid to fully embrace happiness because you think that sadness is just around the corner. But let's just break this cycle right now, because I know that this fear is stopping you from feeling all the joy you're meant to experience. So let's talk about it. When I was growing up, there was this general idea in our community that if you laugh too hard, there is some sadness around the corner, and there is a chance that you might become sad if you are laughing too much or if you are super happy. And it was, I think, especially as women from in South Asia, I think there is that idea of, oh, you shouldn't enjoy yourself too much, and I kind of internalized it. So every time I'm laughing way too much, or I'm experiencing authentic pure joy where my belly is aching from all the laugh, I immediately stop myself and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't feel this much happiness. It would just mean that I'm going to feel so sad soon. So I should just stop whatever I'm feeling right now. And when I grew up, I knew consciously that that is a very irrational fear. But something in me just kept coming up. Every time I'm laughing or happy, there was this sound in my brain just saying that, oh, but don't laugh that much. And that was so hard for me to like get through, especially when I'm trying to just live my life. So I did some research on it, and I understood that it is not just like a failing. There's an actual word for it called cherophobia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's essentially the idea that our brain is protecting ourselves from disappointment. It's just part of a survival instinct where if we feel too much happiness, it needs to come back to that equilibrium, and our brain thinks that, oh, I can only do that if I'm disappointed. So it's just part of the survival instinct. Our brain is trying to control things that it actually can't control. So it's just also trying to control the happy or the joy aspect ourselves, which is very hard to work with. The whole point of feeling this fear is because we are so uncomfortable with our emotions, so we would much rather live in that neutrality. But that is so unfair. That is so unfair to the amount of amazing things we could feel, or all these intense emotions humans are meant to feel. All those things make us who we are, but we are so scared of this sadness, and we are so scared of any sort of vulnerability. You're telling me that we would much rather live in a state of like void? Is that what we have come to? And I'm not going to let me or you go through that ever again, because it's not fair for us to live in that space of, oh, I shouldn't feel too happy, I shouldn't feel too sad. You have the ability to feel emotions so intensely, which means that you have the right to feel them in any way possible. And I kept thinking about this. I kept thinking about where did this idea even come from? So, and I made a couple of theories on it. My first theory is that especially I'm also talking from my perspective of community and ancestors and everything. And what I think is that our ancestors just wanted to instill this idea that, oh, this too shall pass, and they actually wanted us to practice detachment from short-term comforts, and they wanted us to feel that we should prioritize our long-term gains and long-term happiness, and we should practice a sense of essentially stepping away from anything that makes us feel so happy to the point where we can't live without it. So I think there was that aspect of like, oh, I need to embrace this too shall pass. But somewhere along the way we lost the plot of the movie, and we are just left with this tremendous fear of feeling happy about anything. We think that if I feel happy about this one thing, if I feel some sort of peace with this, there is going to be something that just comes in and disrupts everything I have ever felt in my entire life. And I think That's where the problem lies. And it's even backed up by psychology. We have this thing called hedonic adaptation, where when we are like in a state of very intense emotion, so if you're feeling very happy, we come into, after a while, we are obviously going to come into that equilibrium or that balanced state, and we think that that is some sort of crash, and I don't want to feel that sadness that might come along with it. But what we need to understand, that emotions are fleeting, happiness and sadness are fleeting. Understanding and accepting that is okay. What we need to do is to try to improve or make sure that our balance or equilibrium state eventually becomes joy. If that balance state is so high, we don't even feel like it's a crash. But that can only happen if you try to at least live in a state of happiness. If you're constantly scared of being sadness, that will automatically mean that your equilibrium state is here, which means that you're constantly going to be sad. So ironically, your fear is the one that is keeping you back from feeling that authentic joy and feeling that and maintaining that feeling in the first place. The second theory I want to talk about can be connected to the first theory I told, where we are meant to come back to that state of equilibrium, right? But what we essentially do is we try to inject ourselves with this very quick comfort and very short gain comforts in our life, such as constantly scrolling through your phone or like looking at screen for hours on end, just eating something for just because it makes you feel good for that momentary sort of time and just makes you feel shitty for the rest of the day. Things like this you do, it's for that moment it might feel good, but that does not mean that's true happiness. It's just there is an absence of sadness, and that's not the same thing. But when you actually engage in true, authentic happiness in a very loving relationship or with your friends or even in your own company, when you finally realize that, oh, I am genuinely happy for the first time, your brain kind of freaks out because you have never let it to feel that happiness in the first place. You make sure that the equilibrium is in that space of short-term comforts or just doing things that only makes you feel good for a very short period of time. And I am not trying to blame any of us here. We are living in a space where it's constantly, we are bombarded with information and we are so overwhelmed. I completely understand. But the only way we can get out of this fear is by feeling more of that fear. I'll tell you what I mean by that in like a few minutes. My third theory is that the sadness is not an output or what comes after happiness, but it's part of the process. It's the idea that, as I mentioned before, once you feel that true authentic happiness, your brain kind of freaks out, but it also knows that that's essentially what it means. That's a kind of happiness it wants to sustain its life. That means that you're going to feel sad about it for a while. And what we do is, the minute we feel that sadness, we just go back into our old patterns. We just go back into things that make us momentarily feel good. What I would love if all of us do is to actually see it as an invitation to clear out all the negative things that's been holding us back, to actually feel that sadness, to sit in that pain for a bit and actually thanking yourself for feeling that happiness and knowing that, okay, that's what I essentially need, and being okay with the fact that sometimes I feel sad, and that's okay. That does not mean that I am not in an authentic space. It does not mean that I can't be happy or anything like that. It's just the sadness you feel right now is just a stepping stone for your next level of happiness, where you can sustain that happiness. But you can only do that once you feel through this pain, once you are okay with the fact that, yeah, I might sometimes just get sad, and that's okay. Only then you can feel that happiness to its truest, most authentic extent. Now, we know where this fear might stem from, but how can we actually break free from it? as I've been foreshadowing from my theories, I think the number one change you can do is mindset shift. Whenever you're happy and whenever this fear kind of creeps in, just for a second, breathe, pause, and think that whenever I am sad, I am almost always present with myself. I am actually sitting there and thinking, oh,
I feel sad.
which means that you are present with your feelings, right? And how we deal with it, that's a whole separate video. But for now, we are most likely to be acknowledging the fact that we are sad than the fact that we are actually happy. So promise yourself that next time when you're sad, you will actually sit there, embrace those feelings, and be actually present with yourself. Which, but that also means that you need to be completely be with yourself when you're happy. So next time when you're with your friends and you're feeling this immense fear, just for a second, sit there and tell yourself, I am happy right now, and that's all that matters, which will make you feel like, okay, I am in this present moment right now. And that simple mindset shift and that conscious awareness of where you are and how happy you are would be so much easier to feel that same amount of happiness the next time. This will make sure that that level I mentioned, that equilibrium state, just goes a bit higher. And that's the only thing we can do, right? That's the only thing we can do, to be present and to see how loved you are and be so grateful that, oh, I'm able to feel this sense of intense happiness. How amazing is that? My second idea would be to on journaling on the prompt. What are the things that's holding me back, both from fear and happiness? I think it's important we also talk about what are the things that's holding you back from feeling sadness, is because most of the time people who have an intense fear of happiness actually stems from their intense fear of sadness. They are so scared of feeling that emotion. So write down what's actually stopping you from feeling it. What's the worst that could happen if you feel that emotion in the first place? When you actually write it down in a place, you can see the patterns that are coming up. Most of the time it might be something your parents said, or it might be negative experiences you might have felt every time you talked about that emotion, or the way you might have treated yourself when you were sad in the first place. These patterns can actually help you to recognize what is wrong and why am I feeling this much fear around my emotions in the first place. And I think that can be a great starting point to feeling authentic emotions and authentic happiness. The third thing I would say is, take time to do small things that makes you so happy, like going dancing, going and meeting your friends, and trying to create authentic experiences with other people. It does not matter whether they might reciprocate the exact same thing. I know it would be so much easier if they did, and I know it can be so hard, and I am not go asking you to just go make friends people who makes you feel bad just to feel something. No, that's not what I'm saying. But try to keep an active experience and try to do things actively for your own happiness. And rather than just going to work or going to class and just coming back home and just scrolling through your phone, try to make sure that you do things that you love. Like if you love dancing, just go dance. If you love talking to people, try going for community experiences where you can meet new people. Things like that can actually make you feel so alive. And the fourth thing I would say is, create a self-care routine. Create a routine where it requires discipline for you, where you have to wake up in the morning, where you have to work out, or even like pampering things like getting your nails done and things like that can really help you to feel like, okay, I am showing up for myself every day. And even taking some time to drink your coffee in the morning instead of just rushing and drinking it, taking some time or even practicing mindfulness for like 5 minutes can make you feel like, okay, I am showing up for myself every day, which means that I'll show up for myself when my emotions set in. When I feel sadness, I will be there to hold myself because I have the discipline to get me through my day-to-day life, which means that I can handle myself, I can handle all my intense emotions. Make sure that you make yourself feel that way, because you wouldn't believe another person if they say that, oh, I'm going to show up for you, but you see how they show up for themselves in their lives, and they are not the kind of person who ever shows up for themselves. Would you believe that, oh, they might actually show up for me? Not really, right? Because there is no discipline in their life, so why would they show up for you? That's the same thing you would think about yourself. You would not show up for yourself if you do not have discipline to show up for yourself. So show yourself that I can do this. I am worth it. I am worth these emotions. I'm worth these feelings. I'm worth all this love I can get. You're so worth it. Trust me. At the end of the day, we are not here to live a life of basic passive neutrality. No, we are here to enjoy life, experience life, and feel all the highs and lows of life. So, next time when you feel like, oh, I am about to be really happy, instead of being so scared and just closing the door, open and be brave enough to believe that I am going to handle whatever comes next, because I know myself and I can do it. I can hold myself whatever comes next. I'm just going to enjoy this very moment right here. I hope this video has been a little bit more engaging for you. I hope it gave you something, and let me know what you think. I would be really grateful if you could subscribe. I would be really grateful if you could comment on the video, because it really helps me know whether you like these videos. So please subscribe. I love you so much. Bye bye.